So guys, I want to do a tough video today, and I want to talk about the time that I've been put on medication in high school. And then there's like two parts to this video, and I might do it on two separate days. And I want to talk about what got me put on medication and sort of like the mental manipulation that happened, and then also, a couple of lessons about this. I think like the first thing I've always kind of said that no matter where you are in your life, no matter your psychology or whatever, you always have to be in control of yourself because obviously there are consequences when you're not in control. And sometimes that means family does not know how to help you, schools don't know how to help you, and they know how to help you by putting you on medication. You also understand that you live in a very pro medication world. So if somebody let's say someone was sexually assaulted as a child and they're having a hard time getting over it. There'll be people that will say take them to psychiatry. There'll be people who are saying, oh, well, let's put them on medication. Or there'll be people who'll be like, okay, we gotta move on, forget about what happened to you. And those are not always the best options, really. My philosophy is that we have to be acknowledging of what people go through. We have to be sensitive. We have to help people get over things the right way. And if we can create the right consequence for people who've gone through injustices, that's better. And helping people move forward. We don't create a world where we teach people that when bad things happen to you, you just smile and move on, really. Because I really hid my feelings a lot as a child because my dad would get in my face and yell and scream at me and be like, why are you sad? What's wrong? Okay, no TV for a week, no TV for 2 weeks, no TV for 3 weeks. I say how I feel, okay, that's good parenting, but you're still punished for 3 weeks. That's not the way to do it. So there's a huge backstory that two things happened to me in middle school in the sixth grade. That I went to Wagner Middle School and I was severely bullied. And then also I was told by my biological mother. And the story about it was that she neglected me and my older brother. One day that she got so mad, she took a glass bottle, smashed it across his face. We lived in Buffalo, New York at the time. So what happened was that my brother was so neglected. I think he was like 4 or 5 years old and he didn't really know what snow was or didn't really see a lot of snow, even in wintertime because she was kept inside. She always kept like the house is really, really dark. And then also she never really cleaned me. And then also my brother and I both had mental health issues through our entire life because of her. So in middle school we were told that. And then also I remember the other thing too is that my brother did very well in foster care. But then when we were adopted, my adopted parents were harsh on him for not making friends. Like they'd do things like, scream and yell at him for not making friends. They would say things like, I don't understand why you're not making friends. This is ridiculous. If you don't know the names of all your classmates, all 30 of them, no TV, no video games. And they believed in exposure therapy, which means that what are you more afraid of? Dad yelling at you or dad punishing you or dad smacking you or doing what I want, which is you making friends. And this also teaches negative reinforcement because how do you want to make friends? How do you want to improve yourself if you're being bullied or threatened into doing that, versus saying this is going to happen, but we have to understand and respect the a person developing into that, warming up into that. Because sometimes when you're really harsh on somebody, you can get the opposite behavior, or you can teach somebody to behave like a sociopath. You don't care about my feelings, I don't care about others' feelings. So I was told all about, so like with my biological mother being abusive, neglectful, almost killing us as like, as me as like maybe 0 years old, my brother I was like 3 or 4 or whatever. I was kind of, I might have like the ages mixed up. I was kind of told in middle school, oh, well, adults have problems too. You need to forgive, you need to move on really. And maybe the way to move on is to become black dads with kids and do better really. And I understand too about my adopted father, and I use the name of Garrison Rick about like Rick. The thing about him is that he was abused growing up, so maybe that also happened to him as well. Like he realized that his dad walked down on him, his stepfather. I think it's like his stepfather or his uncle was abusive to him. So maybe he kind of had that type of thing of like, this is how older generations teach the younger generation by saying like, persevere over your hardship. And sometimes that motivates people to do better, or that motivates people to go in the other direction. And that motivated me to go in the other direction. So I went into the direction of never dating people, of never dating black women, because I was told that my mother was half black, half Native American. And I used to get bullied by a lot of African Americans in middle school. And then also too, I remember like, I was kind of one of those, mixed race, part black people, a little bit like Uncle Ruckus on one side, and on the other side, I kind of was like, Huey Freeman from the Boondocks, where, there's African Americans and then there's the niggas. And, the niggas are the degenerate, pants sagging, fighting, scheming, wheeling and dealing black people. But as we all understand, that there are certain people of every group, of every race, that behaves like stereotypes. There are gay people who are polite, friendly, respectful. Then there are gay people who like to give people hugs, they try to kiss people, and they try to act really nasty, really. I've known women who are very nice and friendly. Then I know women who are very manipulative. And I've known some women who will lie, who teach their daughters to lie about crimes and whatever, really, So there's always people there's always every difference, gender, race, sexuality, whatever. There are people that are negative stereotypes, and there are people that are stereotypes. But because you meet a lot of stereotypes in your life doesn't give you an excuse to be racist, really. So what happened was that from like 6th grade all the way to my junior year of high school, 11th grade, so like 5 years, I was harboring a lot of hate and anger for multiple feelings. Like I remember like going to Connecticut in a mostly white community, and I had a great time there. A lot of people that were very nice and friendly, really. But I remember always harboring a lot of hatred because, I think once I was angry with my biological mother, I was angry about how I was bullied by a lot of black people growing up. And then I also grew up in a family, and I'll do some other videos where I'm mixed race, but my father both my adopted fathers are white, and they want me to be their black child, really. Like I remember one time my younger brother, who's also adopted, Jordan, he's a very dark-skinned black kid. And I remember like him asking my parents, hey, is Matt and Byron black? And they're like, sure, they're black. And they're like, oh, their parents must be, these black people. And my dad was telling him, sure, yeah, they're all black. Matt and Byron are black. They come from very deep black families and stuff like that. We should have a party, so it's all these black people at our house, really. And I almost like lost my shit, really, because I actually saw a picture of my biological father. My biological father is white like a ghost, really, and so is one side of my family is all these white European. One side of my biological family is all these white European people who have some French heritage, and my biological mother is part black and Native American, really. So I'm maybe 50% white, but I and part black and part Native American, really. But I've been called a nigger many times. I've been treated like a nigger by a lot of white people. So I almost fall into African American because of how I've been treated through my life, really. And like you're in mostly white communities, and people expect you to sag your pants. White people walk up to you and be like, how's it going, my nigger? Peace, my nigga. Do you have blunt, my nigga, really? So I think like in America, I'm a black guy because I've been treated like a nigger many times, really, and I've been called nigger by a lot of white people. And treated poorly. Like I've talked about the 4L Film Project, where I've dealt with racism and I almost got arrested by a city producer, and Mark Rupert doesn't give a shit about like how I was treated by different people, really. So I've been treated like a token black guy. And also when you grow up in a white family that wants you to be their black kid, I've dealt with a lot of African American racism, more than most, really. The other part of it that I will talk about is that my parents had rules in our house. Like one of the rules was that there was no salt on our food, because my dad had this rule that African Americans cannot have salt in his household because black people have high blood pressure issues, or their blood saturates salt a lot more than other races, and that's actually racist. That's not even scientifically true. There might be issues in the black community of black people having bad health, really, but that has nothing to do with genetics. That has something to do with culture. Like, as you watch movies and you see black families serving like the fried chicken and the cornbread and the ribs, or you look at how a lot of black people dealt with poverty. So there's a reason why, they're not drinking sparkling water. They're drinking like grape drink, or those Sun and Kiss bottles, or like those little those ones that look like little grenades, like those really fruit drinks or whatever, really. And then also too, there's like that line from Good Times about like how there's this news article saying that black people avoid the doctor, and it was written away to say that black people are not intelligent or cultured enough to go to doctors. And then I think John Amos's character said something like, "No, well, the article forgets about how many African Americans can't afford the doctors, and that's the point really." And when he said that on Good Times, a lot of people were cheering because that's true. Because articles are sometimes people don't understand when it comes to health or other issues in the black community and other communities. Sometimes people don't understand the cause may be economic, the cause may be a lack of education, because you look at how inner city schools are different than mostly white areas, rural areas. So again, it's hard to grow up in a household where you're a black kid. You grow up with very controlling parents. They're like, okay, if you say mixed race or you write that under like an ID or whatever, they're gonna scratch it out and put black. Or whenever I go to a therapist or other people, like I remember like going to a therapist one time. I remember my dad saying to my therapist, we're two gay white guys with 3 black kids. And that's kind of like, like how my dad thinks. Like there might be a power issue of I'm this gay white guy and I have 3 black kids, and they're very proud to be black men really. And if I say a mixed race or whatever, my dad would shut that down, or he'll do that. Like, I didn't hear you, you're black, and that's all I see. You know what, you're black, you're black, you're black, you're black, you're black. So growing up in a household like that was very, very harsh. So I had like a bunch of anger from my mother. I had a bunch of anger from living in a household where I was black because my parents wanted me to be their black son, really. I was also angry because I was bullied in middle school a lot. And I think I remember doing a video talk about like how I was severely bullied at summer camp, that I came close to bringing a knife to summer camp and almost hurting myself or other people with it. And I also remember when I was being bullied at summer camp, they did things like they took my bathing suit, so I'll be walking around naked. They'll be beating me, jumping me, or sometimes they'll be like, okay, can you go? Oh, okay, Bart. The rule of that summer camp was that if you want to go to a hot dog stand or whatever, you had to go with somebody else, really. Like 2 kids have to go together to go to the hot dog stand. And I remember like the first day I did that, and there were a bunch of kids like throwing water balloons at me, punching me, kicking me in the chest, and they're all laughing at me. And then some of these kids, like some of these black kids, looked like they were grown ass men, really. And I remember like the last day of summer camp, I actually didn't go to a theme park with them because of all the bullying. And I remember my dad, he punished me for like 3 or 4 days because I threatened to bring a knife to summer camp, and he was more upset that I did not tell him about the issue. I just wanted to bring a knife to summer camp. I understand like both sides of the argument. Yes, you got to punish your kid for making threats. You got to punish your kid for thinking about bringing a weapon. Yes, you got to punish for that. But also too, there's severe bullying, and there's severe issues at summer camp. Your kids being assaulted, people trying to take their clothes. They're being spat on, they're being assaulted and punched. Really, you're overlooking that, and my dad overlooked that because he was more mad that I couldn't do the Eddie Winslow, Carl Winslow thing of talking to my dad about my problems. Really, because also I grew up in the no snitch culture, and my parents, and that was another factor. There was a lot of domestic violence, so my parents would flip out over shit. Like I remember, my brother. I remember eating a hot dog in middle school, and I didn't have a knife to cut it with, so I took a big hunk of it. My dad grabbed my hand, and my dad grabbed my hand with one arm. He took his other hand, he took the hot dog with the fork and threw it across the living room for rude manners. He flipped over the table, told me and my brother to pick it up, really. My dad almost beat me with a vacuum cleaner one time. I know I mentioned my dad choked me, because he was one time because of The Simpsons. I remember one time my parents had a fight about money, and one of my dads ran out of the house. My other dad dragged him back into the house, and they had all this drama, really. Or I remember I'll do a separate video that one time my brother was asked to name a food that he never had before for dinner, and I said sushi, and then my dad was like, name a fucking food. My brother's like, how could I name something that I've not had, really? That doesn't make any sense, really, because you're telling me to know the name of something I've never had before. I've had a lot of stuff, really. And I remember my dad thinking that he was a smart ass. He took my brother, threw him in a chair. The chair broke into pieces because he was seen as being a smart ass instead of answering a question, really. And this is taking advantage of an autistic kid. So that's another factor. I grew up with a lot of domestic violence and the attitude of the parents want to be emotional and violent. So be it. So be it, because kids are like slaves. You can smack them, you can punch them, you can choke them, you can throw them into chairs, you can flip over things, make a mess, really, and the kids have to tolerate that. As I said, it's the tag team bullying on the children, Garrison and Rick. So I remember in middle school, I was into anime, and there's this anime called Nuku Nuku Dash, and I remember like watching that, and it was like the first time I remember hearing Japanese music, and with a lot of anime like Yuki Kajiura, noir, a lot of these when I hear this music, there's always like this transcendental feeling, out of body experience. But also when you're that young, you're that naive, really, when you watch a story with a lot of melodrama, what happens is, you're kind of, it's like, wow, this thing's amazing when you don't see a lot of stories use melodrama or sympathetic characters, really. So I remember watching that anime, and I remember like when I first watched that anime, one of the episodes, really, I had like this hallucination where I saw past the Big Bang, I saw the cosmic web, or dark matter. I remember like seeing a bunch of static, and I remember like after that I had a lot of like energy after that. So what happened was that, you look at me now, I'm 38 years old, like I can work multiple 14-hour days in a row. I can, if I really want to, I could be up 3 or 4 days straight. Or even like when I was in college, I remember like I had 5 jobs. I did 24 hours. No, I did 24 credits. Some days I'll be up over 20 hours, really. Like it's almost like, it's like Goku going from Saiyan to Super Saiyan type of thing, really. So how can you watch an anime and you have like these hallucinations, and then as soon as you watch it, it's almost like you're jumping in a quantum of energy. And I understand too that maybe, again, it's just music, it's just visuals, and it's other things that kind of maybe makes you feel kind of complete. Because maybe when I watched Nuku Nuku Dash, I kind of felt complete by watching this. And I'll explain 2 things, really. That when I watched this anime, Nuku's character, she was kind of almost like a mother figure to Ryunosuke, in a way, really. And then also too, she was also very sexualized by him. So maybe there was a mother, like a mommy complex and a horror complex. Like they say with Freud, you either look at women as Madonna figures, like goddesses, or you look at them as horrors. That's like in Sigmund Freud. Like if you watch the movie Taxi Driver, it's the same way, where there's 2 girls in this. There's Jodie Foster's character, who's the horror character. There's Sybil Shepherd's character, who's supposed to be this angel type of character. So there's Madonna horror complex. I think with Nuku Nuku, she represented 3 type of women to me. She represented the mother figure, where in the anime she protects people, she sacrifices herself, she's an animal lover, she's patient, she kind of has like that guardian, and then also she has superpowers, so she's almost like that goddess type of character, like the mother goddess type of thing, really. Like a female Jesus Christ, really, like a mother goddess type of thing. And I also think on our side, she was a very sexualized character. Like when she transforms, you see close up of her ass, see her boobs jiggle, and other things like that. And there's been episodes sexualizing her, so you kind of also got like the sexual image of her. So I remember when I watched the anime and I was like listening to all the other episodes, all of it was like emotional and powerful. So again, I almost felt like, as I said, it's almost like Goku going Super Saiyan, or it's almost like hearing something that just really hits your emotions very, very powerfully. And I remember the last episode of the anime, she dies. And I remember like when the episode that she dies, I had a mental breakdown. Like I remember like chuckling to myself, laughing to myself, and acting all over the place. Because I was like, wow, like my favorite character in anime just died, really. And I remember going on a schizophrenic journey in my head, really. I think on one side, I thought about creating a religion where I resurrected her from the dead. On one side, I was kind of like, it's really weird. Maybe I should worship her like a god or something like that, because it's weird when you watch an anime or watch something and it kind of, as I said, why do you have superhuman energy? Why do you go from, one day being lazy to having all the energy in the world? Why do you go from being like the worst kid on the track team, always coming in last place, to now you're running 5 or 6 miles, like nonstop, like you have you have infinite energy, really? Why do you run 5 or 6 miles and then after that you have enough energy to compete in like a champion run or whatever? That does not happen to human beings, really. So I remember I think the last episode. So I remember watching. I think from June was one of the episodes that I watched. Was the first episode that I watched, and then in August was the last episode that I watched. So I remember reading The Crucible in high school, and there was stuff about like confession and getting sins off your shoulder, really. So I remember like there's a program called the Great Program where people went on stage and they shared their feelings about what they're going through. And I shared to the audience that, I am racist because of how I was bullied by a lot of African Americans in my life. And I also told the audience about my biological mother and the horrible shit she did to me, the horrible shit she did to my brother. And I lost control of my emotions. I was sad, I was angry. But what happened was people thought that I was spoofing the Chappelle show. So everybody was like laughing their asses off. And then I remember like days after this, and then I remember the principal taking the remote from me, taking the microphone away from me. And I remember like, after that, like some people were, a lot of white people in the school are saying, "Hey Byron, how's your little nigger speech? Or how's the speech where, you talk about how you hate niggers?" And I've had a bunch of white, and it was really like in my school, the school that I went to, Guilford High School, saying the word nigger by white people became normal. And also, this is when the Chappelle show was very popular. So a lot of people who are white were calling black people niggers and saying, "How's it going, my nigger? Nigger this, nigger that." I'm quoting the Chappelle show, "nigger, nigger, nigger." It was like, that was socially normal. It was almost like you lived in 1800 Louisiana, type of thing, really. That was absolutely very true. So I remember like what happened was that the principal had a meeting with me, and he said something like, "Hey, you know what?" He's Native American, but he said something like, "Hey, you know what? If I was bullied by a lot of white people in my life, I wouldn't be hating white people." And he also said something like, "You know what? I was really surprised that you did that because first of all, you're black, Byron. And I thought you would go on stage talk about how you're happy to be this black kid adopted by gay white men, really." And this is also kind of the other issue that happens is a lot of racial roles. And one of the racial roles that I dealt with in my life was that I'm a black child. Black people have to talk about how they're grateful to have white parents, and if their parents are gay or whatever, you have to say, "You know what, I'm, yes for my gay daddies," and everything like that. Really, I'm supposed to play a role, really, and that's how I kind of felt. But I remember like they told my father about it, and I also confessed to my dad about what happened, really. And this is kind of like, what happened was that my dad said a couple things to me. First of all, my father's white, and he said something like, "You know what, the word nigger is very offensive, Byron. Those were the last words that your people heard before they were killed." And then he said something to me like, "Byron, you are a nigger. You boy, you are a nigger, Byron. You are a nigger. Your older brother is a nigger, and your little brother, Jordan, the really, really black kid, is the biggest nigger that we have, really. The really, really dark kid, he's the biggest nigger that we got. You are a nigger, Byron. You are a nigger." Because he really wanted me to get through my skull, and he was also poking my chest like this. He really wanted me to get through my skull that I'm a black kid, and I need to be this proud black guy, type of thing, really. And then the other decision was that he felt that I was diagnosed with autism at that time, but I was never, how should I say this? I was diagnosed by my father and a few other people. I never saw a psychiatrist saying that I have autism. That was always something my father had. But I remember my dad saying, "Byron, you are so autistic. You don't understand that nigger is a bad word to say. You can't watch South Park. You can't watch the Chappelle show. You can't watch controversial television because you don't understand, because your autistic brain does not understand that nigger is not an okay thing to say." And that was completely inaccurate. And I also remember like saying too, like, some of my side saying like, it's because like you told me about my mom and how shitty she was, really. And my dad kind of looked really sad because honestly, he kind of knew deep down inside that honestly, when he told me about my biological mother, that put me down a bad path, really. Because really, as I said, the big thing that I was always kind of taught is show forgiveness to this woman. She nearly beat to death a few other of her kids. She got remarried. She ruined a couple of families. The last years of her life right now, she wants to be this really beautiful Catholic woman, like this creature redemption. I think my biological mother, one of her friends reached out to me saying, "Look, I should need to take care of her. I need to go down to New York and take care of her." And I just blocked her friend and my biological mother. And I kind of said too, I don't, if she's like dying in the street, fuck her, really. Like, I don't care. There's a story that she was raped as a child. I'm like, well, I can care less, really. You can't feel sorry for people that are so fucking horrible. Like, Hitler had PTSD from World War I, but you can't feel sorry for Hitler for having PTSD for World War I. I've done some really off-the-wall fucking things in my life. And there are times when people don't should not feel sorry for me. I almost died in a car crash a few years ago, but I was doing a bunch of bad shit to people at that time, really. You can't feel sorry for me that I got in a car crash because I've done some egregious shit, really. But I remember, like, after he said that, I wasn't allowed to watch the Chappelle Show. And I also remember, like, for the next couple of months, really, people were asking me, like, about my nigger speech and wanting me to say the word nigger in front of them in high school. And then what happened was that my dad went to Europe, and I believe that this was, like, February. So this incident, the Great Program incident, was in October 2004. But I remember having PTSD and frustration about it. But so in February 2005, I stayed up all night watching a bunch of anime on television. I saw Read or Die, Better Man, I think Magical Shopping Arcade, Akihabara or something like that. And again, it was like watching anime. And anime was like a drug, really, because it was like, look at all these emotional stories. I remember watching Noir in the anime club, so it was almost like photosynthesis. Like there's all these anime, all these melodramas, all these powerful stories. It felt like, as I said, it honestly felt like, like I was Goku getting energy from the spirit bomb or whatever type of thing. I felt, and as I said, I'm not sure what it was. I'm not sure why watching anime gave me a surge of energy and why I got a surge of energy from watching it. Because, like, as I said, I know a lot about spirituality, mysticism, psychology, but that's something I cannot explain. You don't watch movies and you don't go, and like I said, you don't watch a movie and you don't get so charged that you have like a superhuman level of endurance for the rest of your life, or you keep having superhuman levels of endurance throughout your entire life, really. So, so after that, what happened in middle school was that I was also still dealing with depression. So I remember like working at like a hardware store. Like we had like a job training class. So I worked at a hardware store, and then I would buy like chains and whatever, and just like wear them like suspenders, like pimp suspenders. And I remember like wearing chains like bondage one day. Then I remember like wearing chains like I was like a prisoner or whatever. And then I also remember that was also another thing that happened too to me was that, and I did a video about that, like how because I was in special needs program, they forced me to take job training. And it was retarded because I was already working at a store for a few years. I worked at Bishop's Orchard. So it's almost like, how the fuck do you need job training when you're doing a job so well? And as I learned, it's pooling because they're like, okay, you know what? We got to make sure all these special needs programs have bodies, really. So we're going to put a kid who knows what they're doing, really, in a program where it's not appropriate for them. And I actually remember like I was gonna go to a summer camp, and what happened was that I went to like a summer camp after my third year of high school. After my 3 years of high school, I went to like New York Institute of Technology for a program to teach me how to job skills and how to live on my own, really. And I remember like what happened was like I was more than qualified to do that, and then teachers or the special needs person said something like, I'm not mentally capable of doing that. My dad threatened to sue the school, but they negotiated, really. So I also kind of didn't get that when I was younger, but they also kind of saw me as a body, really. Byron has to take job training classes in high school, so that way that those programs make money. Byron is not allowed to get money from the school to pay for job training and independent skills when it's outside of like the school Connecticut program, really, because his school is cheap, and they're willing to say something like he's so autistic that he can't do it because they want to save like a few grand, really. And that's I think it's Adeline Nicolari. She did that. She's also a very piece of shit person as well, really. But yeah, I remember like, that's how I was in the job training program when I was in high school. Like I was unqualified for that, but I remember going through depression as well, really. And I remember like taking those chains that I bought from the store, instead of like making them pimp suspenders one day, I was using it for bondage and masochism another day. Then I was using it in school for wearing shackles and saying like I feel like I'm in prison or whatever, really. So what happened was that I was accused of I'm not wearing pants now. I'm wearing my underwear, but I was kind of accused of doing like that crotch. Like I was accused of kind of doing this, like that, suck my dick to a teacher when I never did that. And what happened was they took the side of the teacher because they said something, and this was a lie. They said that I went up to her and said, "You're accusing me because I'm black," and that's never what happened. The teachers lied. So I remember like my dad saying something like, "You know what? You're saying to a teacher that she's accusing you of grabbing your crotch in front of her because she's black. She's making up the story because you're black." And then my dad shouted at me and said, and then a few months ago, you're talking about how you didn't like niggers. And my dad's white, by the way. He's like, "Fuck you, Byron. Fuck you. You're a fucking asshole." My dad was grabbing his crotch like, "Yeah, Byron. I'm Byron. I'm Byron. Yeah, woo." And my dad was grabbing his dick. And my dad's a 40-year-old white man. So a 40-year-old white man's grabbing his penis from his front top like, yeah. Just to kind of make a point, really. I mean, I understand my dad lost his temper, really. But do you find that fucking appropriate that you're 40 years old and you're grabbing your dick in front of your son, really? Even if I did do that, or even if my dad saw me do that, hypothetically, that's not an appropriate response, really. And then your father using racial language and saying "fuck you" to your son, no, not appropriate at all, really. And yes, the truth of the matter is I did not do that. But the issue was that I stayed up all night. So maybe I did it and did not know that. But there's also some other kids too. There's this kid named Jamie Bryant in high school that looked a lot like me. He actually broke a window one day and they actually thought that I did it. But it got cleared, really. But ultimately, it was kind of what happened a lot during this time was teachers never lie. So I got like a Saturday detention, really. And I remember like telling my dad was saying something like, "Oh, the family's gonna get sued. We're gonna lose everything because of what you did, because you just sexually harassed the teacher," really. And I remember telling my dad, I didn't do it, but I would definitely pay you back. My dad was like, "Fuck you. You don't fucking get it, really." And other shit like that, and this is also kind of like another thing about emotional abuse. Sometimes we're upset with our kids. Sometimes we also tell our kids, "You know what? You've been doing so much off the wall shit. That's why we don't believe you." And you do some antisocial shit. That's why people, whenever there's stories about you, that's why people believe these fucked up stories about you, because you're already doing some other fucked up things. So that's what I had to learn, really. And I also had to learn too. I was hurting, I was sad, I was depressed. But I had no right to behave antisocially. And when you do that, you're creating, what's the word? You're creating a caricature of yourself, really. So the next part of it was that I remember, at work, when at Bishop's Works, it was like box cutters. So I remember I was listening to the 50 Cent song because I was kind of like saying to myself, people want me to be a black stereotype, because also this is also when the hood culture was going on. So people wanted me to be this black African American thug. So I remember having a case of grape soda under my bed. I remember saying, "You know what, I'm going to sue the school because they don't serve fried chicken and watermelon every single day." I remember sagging my pants. I was into that stereotype because everybody wanted me to. I actually had an A+ in chemistry, but I remember failing a lot of my tests because I was like, "You know what, black people are stupid. Every black person I see on television is saying the word nigga and being unintelligent, really. So I got to do what people want me to be, a nigga. So I got to be a nigga." And that's how black people are. Black people don't value education. They want to drink. They want to eat fried chicken. They want to abuse their girlfriends. They want to be terrible. That's African American people. People want me to be black, but they want me to be the worst type of black guy. They want me to be the nigga. They want me to be the gangster. They want me to smack my girlfriend in the face for not coming to school with fried chicken every single day, really. So I remember listening to other people's negativity, my own negativity. I brought a knife to school. I threatened somebody with it. And I remember the day after I got suspended and I came back to school, I apologized to that kid. I was saying, "You know what, I was being an asshole. I wasn't thinking." We made peace, really, but I understood I was a fucker for doing that. But I remember that's when they put me on medication, really. And I remember my dad saying, "You know what, in school you got in trouble 3 times, 3 strikes you're out." I remember my dad shaking me like, "I want my son back. I want my son back." And I remember my dad saying, things like, "No, fuck you. You're a fucking asshole. Fuck this. Fuck, 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 fuck." Well, my dad was exactly like Tony Soprano, very emotional. And again, this is also another thing that happens in a lot of families, especially in my family, where I couldn't express how I felt and maybe say, hey, you know what, maybe I need to see a psychiatrist and we need to have 1-2 hours about my side and everything like this and everything that I'm saying. And they'll say, hey, you've gone through multiple traumatic experiences. Hey, your father is an emotionally abusive fucker, really. Hey, you need to understand that maybe there might be some schizophrenia, there might be some autism here. But it's a multi-layered issue between trauma, depression, bullying, domestic violence, sexually inappropriate behavior, because I dealt with sexually inappropriate behavior growing up, and other issues. I have a lot of issues, really. And I remember, like, they took me to a psychiatrist, really, and I remember, like, two things happened. He asked me a bunch of questions, like, when you listen to music, do you think it was written for you? When you listen to a song, do you think that song was written for you? And I said, no, really. And then he said, it's kind of borderline. I might have autism. I might have depression. And so what happened was my dad sat next to me, and then he said something like, this morning, Byron was playing with the stove, and I wasn't. And then my dad elbowed me in the shoulder, and he was like, Dad's looking out for you. And I'll remember that for the rest of my life, really, because my father was like, and that's how my father thought. No, Byron is a black man. He has autism, and I'll be fucking damned. I'll be fucking damned if he's gonna walk out of this therapy session without an autism label. He's a black kid with autism. He's a mentally ill African American, and that gives me my power issues because my dad also is a control freak. I think I mentioned one time I was eating food at the dinner table, and my dad grabbed my wrist because he wanted me to answer my little brother's questions. But it's also a power dynamic. My dad's a white man, so he wants to have black kids to feel powerful. He wants to have special needs kids to feel powerful. And this was an example of him at his worst, really, because he manipulated a psychiatrist to put me on medication. And I remember, like, after I was put on medication, I had suicidal thoughts. I actually remember covering my body with Axe body spray to get on the verge of lighting myself on fire, really. And I almost felt very angry. Like, if I wanted to take this key and I wanted to kind of, like, nick somebody with my key, really, it kind of felt like this. It felt like almost like a Clockwork Orange. Like, my body wants me to do something angry, but it's like holding me back, really. That's how it kind of felt with medication, really. And I remember, like, a few years after, I remember, like, almost committing suicide, almost overdosing with medication a couple of times. But I also remember, too, that, I always got A+ in chemistry, even when I messed up, really, and try to self-sabotage. But the A+, the good grades, stood out to my father when he put me on medication. So he's probably like, you know what? Byron is a crazy, off-the-wall, black special needs kid. But now he's going to college. Now he's on the right path. Now he's turning his life around. It's not because he's in therapy right now. It's because I control his brain. I put him on medication. Everybody look at me as this great white man because I took this crazy, cuckoo nigger and I put him on medication. And nothing he ever did in his life stands out until I put him on meds. So that's how it was. And I remember writing a graphic novel called Snow about a bunch of assassins because I watched the anime noir. And really the character, Dr. Lepichnade, was a metaphor for my father and his, control over me and his controlling nature, really. And some of the characters were, like, a side of my anger and a side of my humanity and my side of being a storyteller from all of this and a side of, my ideal woman, really. Like in the Japanese anime noir, I like the character Yuma Kiriko a lot because, it hurts. Like, that's the woman that I'm attracted to, a very hurt and burdened soul trying to persevere, really. And an unconditional love, really. And then also my grandmother, Grandma Madeline, she died in 2010, really. But, no, 2011 she died. But she unconditionally loved me. She accepted me for who I was, really. One of the reasons why, I'm not like, maximum security prison because, like, my grandmother gave my heart, really, despite all the shit that I've been through. But yeah, that was really the whole story. But the whole point of it was, as I said, many lessons. The point of it is that that there are movies and there are stories that really hit our hearts, really, because sometimes some of these stories are very, very emotionally powerful. And they hit our feelings, but we cannot turn that into schizophrenia, like a religion. And sometimes maybe you watch something that energizes you, makes you feel motivated, or makes you feel out of body experiences. There's people who listen to Pink Floyd and feel the same way, but it doesn't give you an excuse to just like take it too far. We can deal with bullying. We can deal with racism. We can deal with people who don't understand us. We can deal with family who doesn't understand us. We can deal with systems like public schools where it's medication first and fuck the kid and the kid needs to shut up second. But we have to know that these things exist really. So don't mess up your life because of it. Don't mess up your life because of it. And then this doesn't mean my father is a supervillain. I think my father was somebody who really wanted to get to know his kid really. But the problem is that, you know, when you live off of assumptions your entire life, when you say things like fuck you, fuck this, you fuck that, fucking, you're not going to teach your kid to have a good relationship with you. And even though my dad was abused growing up and my grandma always told him to shut up and whatever, he probably developed a complex as just saying, hey, that's how children are. They're seen, not heard. Parents know everything about their children. Assumptions are truth, really. But that's not how you get to know your kids, really. And as I said before, that I remember like the last conversation I had with my dad it was like 5 or 6 years ago, but I remember him saying, after I got fired from a job, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, but he said, like, you know, you can run from it, you can hide from it, but you are a person with autism. Hung up the phone on me. But the point of it is, do I have mental health issues? Yes. Everybody has mental health issues. Do I have significant mental health issues that impact my day-to-day life? No, because I can function, I can have a job, I can get whatever I want out of life. Are there some things that I need to work on? Do I have mental health issues in the sense that I have closure issues? Absolutely. Do I have issues with sharing my shit online? Yeah. Do I have issues with anger because I came from a very fucked up environment? Yeah. In psychology, there's something called nature versus nurture. I came from a very antisocial environment. I come from very inappropriate behavior because I live with a relative that has mental health issues. Like the reason why I'm in this fucking motel for the next 3 or 4 days is because I live with a relative that has mental health issues and I'm not going to get any sleep and he's going to be walking around naked with his dick showing because whenever he showers, that's what he does. He leaves the door open. I see my brother's dick every single day because of mental health issues and he can't keep himself private really. There are things in my life that contribute to my toxic mental health issues. So it's a nature versus nurture thing. And it's just like with my brother, really. You know, he had a good support system when he was in foster care, but when he got out of foster care, he was in that, you know, you make friends right now, or no TV, no video games for a long time, really. So, I mean, it's unfortunate that I got put on medication. This is the story of it. But ultimately, too, if I controlled myself, I had more emotional intelligence, I would have not been in that thing, really. So ultimately, it's just like going to prison, really. You know, sometimes when you put yourself in the system takes advantage of you. And it's ultimately your own fault. So it was my fault for all the chaos that I caused. It was also my fault for hurting my reputation. And even though, I was at a very, very young age and I was not life experienced, I was too trusting, I was too emotional and other things like that. Over time, we learn. And that's what I should have done. I should have held myself together, then in college go to therapy and get the help that I needed because clearly I wasn't around people that had my best interest. Unless I said something like, you know what, I'm a black kid and I love my gay white daddies and maybe I'm going to blow a gay man because because my dad even told my therapist one time he assumed that I was a closet homosexual when I'm clearly not a closet homosexual. And then also parents got to get to know their kids.